Okay, so in today's lesson we're going to be learning how to solve absolute value equations. But before we start solving these, I want to make sure that we understand the basics, and that is what an absolute value represents. The absolute value, remember, represents the distance a number is from 0. So in other words, the absolute value of negative 2 is 2, because negative 2 is 2 units from 0 on the number line. If I have the absolute value of negative 7, my answer would be positive 7, because negative 7 is 7 units from 0 on the number line. If I had the absolute value of 8, it's still just 8 as my answer, because it's 8 units away from 0. Now, let's say I had a problem like this. Here I'm looking for what numbers could I put inside the absolute value that would give me 8 as my answer. Well, yes, of course, I could put 8 in there, because the number 8 is 8 units from 0. But we also have negative 8. Negative 8 is also 8 units from 0. So both of these would give me an absolute value of positive 8 as my answer. So I could put 8 in here for x, or I could put negative 8 in here for x. Now that is important to remember for these problems. Now what it does not mean is that all these problems will have the same number. Like your answer will always be 8 and negative 8, or 3 and negative 3, or 7 and negative 7. To illustrate that, let's look at this first example. Here I have the absolute value of x plus 5 equals 1. Now what you want to do is you want to ignore what's inside of absolute value right now, and you want to ask yourself, what two numbers could I put inside of absolute value that would give me 1 as my answer? Well, your answer would be 1 and negative 1. So what that means is that this piece that's inside the absolute value, I could put 1 in there or negative 1. So that means that k plus 5 could equal 1, or k plus 5 could equal negative 1. So I have two equations I'm going to solve here. That will always be the case. There's always going to be two equations. So the first one, when I subtract 5 from both sides, I get k equals 1 minus 5 is negative 4. But here when I subtract 5 from both sides, I don't get positive 4, so my answer is not negative 4 and positive 4. It's k equals negative 4, and here is negative 6. So I'd have two values for k that I could put in here that would give me what is my answer. And you can always check your answers. Because if I put negative 4 in here, negative 4 plus 5 is 1, and the absolute value of 1 is 1. If I put negative 6 in here, negative 6 plus 5 gives me a negative 1. But the absolute value of that still gives me a positive 1 as my answer. So both of these check, so they're both correct. Let's look at the next one. So there's two numbers I could put inside of absolute value here that would give me 2 as my answer. I could put 2 in there, or that m divided by 6 could equal negative 2. So remember, all you're doing is you start out by ignoring what's inside a parenthesis, or inside the absolute value, and ask yourself, well, what two numbers can I put inside of here that would give me this value? Well, the answer would be 2 and negative 2. So that means that piece that's inside of there, that m divided by 6, could be 2 or negative 2. And now we're going to solve these. Now this one here is a little different. To get the m by itself, I'm going to do the opposite of dividing by 6, which is multiplying by 6 on both sides. So when I do that, 2 times 6, well, that equals 12. When I multiply 6 on this side, I get negative 2 times 6 is negative 12. So notice in this case, this is one of the rare occurrences where we do get the same answer, where x could be, or m in this case, could be 12 or negative 12. But most times our answers will be like the first one, negative 4 and negative 6, where we have two different answers. Okay, let's do another one together, and then I'll let you loose to try one on your own. So let's look at this one. 2x plus 2 equals 4. Again, ignore what's on the inside for right now. Ask yourself, what two numbers could I put in the absolute value that would give me 4 as my answer? Well, your answer would be 4 and negative 4. So that means that 2x plus 2 could equal 4, or 2x plus 2 could equal negative 4. Now we're going to solve both of these. So I'm going to start on this first one by subtracting 2 from both sides. Give me 2x equals 2. Divide both sides by 2. Gives me x equals 1. That's one of my answers. Now again, please do not say your answer is 1 and negative 1. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to be the result. So when I subtract 2 from both sides, I get 2x equals negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6. Divide by 2 gives me x equals negative 3. So So my answers for x are 1 and negative 3. Again, I could check that because if I put 1 in there, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 2 is 4. Well, sure enough, the absolute value of 4 is still 4. If I put negative 3 in there, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. The absolute value of that is a positive 4, so it checks. It's an important thing to always go back and do is check your answer. Okay, I want you guys to try this number 4 on your own. I want you guys to see if you can figure out what numbers we can put in there for n. That would give me 2 as our answer. So go ahead and work on that. So pause the video and hit play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, so let's see what we got here. So what you should have found is that there's 2 numbers I could put inside the absolute value. That would give me, that would give me 2 as my answer. I could put 2 in there or negative 2. So now I'm going to solve this by adding 2 to both sides. And then divide by 4. So one of my answers is that n could equal 1. Add 2 to both sides here. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0, so that means n equals 0. When you divide by 4, you'd still get 0. So my answers are 1 and 0 for that second problem, or for number 4, I should say. Okay. This is from previous, we don't need that. Okay, so let's look at a different type of problem. If you notice with all of these, our absolute values were by themselves. We have the absolute value of x or k plus 5 equals 1. Here we have the absolute value of m divided by 6 equals 2. Here we have the absolute value of 2x plus 2 equals 4, and so on. Well, if ever you have a problem like this, where we have something outside the absolute value, I need to get rid of that before I make it into 2 equations. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides here. So now this is still the absolute value of 5 minus 5b. This time it equals 10. So now I'm going to set up my 2 equations. My 2 equations would be, I'm going to write this on the next page here, it would be 5 minus 5b could equal 10, or 5 minus 5b could equal negative 10. So those are my 2 equations, because I could put 10 inside of there and get 10 as my answer, or I could put negative 10 inside of here and get a positive 10 as my answer. So it means 5 minus 5b could be equal 10 or negative 10. Now let's solve both of these. So for the first one, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Make sure you bring down that negative, so it's a negative 5b. 10 minus 5 is 5. Divide both sides by negative 5. Gives me b equals negative 1. Do the same thing to this one. Subtract 5 from both sides. So that's a negative 5 that I bring down. Negative 10 minus 5, that's negative 15. So when I divide by negative 5, I get b equals a positive 3. If we check our answer, I always go back to check with the original problem. So I put 3 in here. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. So 5 minus 15 would be negative 10. The absolute value of that is a positive 10, and 10 minus 4 would be equal to 6. Let's try negative 1. If I put negative 5 times negative 1, that's a positive 5. So 5 and 5 would make 10. And the absolute value of that is 10, minus 4 is 6. So again, both of these check out. Okay, why don't you guys try this last one on your own? So hit pause, and then press play when you're ready to check your answer. Okay, let's see how you did. So you should have first, remember you want to get the absolute value by itself, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So now I have negative 6n plus 6 equals 6. And now there's 2 things I could put inside of here that would give me 6 as my answer. I could have negative 6 or positive 6. So that means this piece here, that's negative 6n plus 6, that could equal 6. Or negative 6n plus 6, that could equal a negative 6. Now we just solve both of these. So the first one, I would subtract 6 from both sides, well that gives me 0. And when I divide by negative 6, that would give me n equals 0 still. But here when I subtract 6 from both sides, that's negative 12. When I divide by negative 6, I get a positive 2. So here n could equal 0 or n could equal 2. So that's what we need to know for solving absolute value equations. So hopefully you have a better understanding of how to do that. Make sure you remember that you'll always end up with two equations you're going to solve. And they won't always be the same number. Like I said, the majority of the time they're going to get two different answers. So only every once in a while when we have a unique situation like number 2 in our example, that we have the same number, only opposites. So with that, good luck on your assignment.